So if you have that bright yellow paper that half sheet I gave you, go ahead and get that out, as well as a calculator. That was what we were supposed to do Monday on Teams, so we're just going to go over that stuff first, since we did not meet. All right. Cool. So part of this is review from last class, when we went over the calculator stuff, and then the other part is a review of what we should have done at home. So let's just go through it together really quickly. So the first one is an application question, so we need to type this into our calculator first. So if you'll go ahead and type that in, hit y equals, and type that into your calculator. Again, if you need a calculator, I have some extras up here. So once I type it into my calculator, I get something that looks like this, which is a problem. That's not a lot of the graph. So we're going to need to adjust our window so that we can see more of our graph. So I can tell I need to see more x values because I can't see where it ends, and I need more y value because I can't see the top. So I'm going to go to window, and I'm going to change both of my maxes to 20. And see if that's enough. So if I change my x max and my y max to 20, then my graph would look like this. So that's good, because that means I can now see both x values, but I still can't see the top. So I'm going to have to fix the y max a little bit more so that I can see the top of my graph. So if I go back to my window, I'm fine with my x values, but now I need the top of the graph, the y max. Let's try 50 and see what happens. So if I make my y max 50, my graph should look something like this. Anyone's graph not look like that? So we all have this as our graph? Good? Okay, I'm going to take everyone's silence not looking at me as a yes. So, once I have my graph, then the next part is figuring out what the question is asking to then figure out how to find that piece on my calculator.
I have my binder in one of my classes. Can I draw real quick?
Oh, sure. Alright, so if I look at A, it says what is the maximum height the rocket will reach? So what part of the graph is this asking for? The maximum, right? It's asking for the maximum. Now, is it asking for the maximum x value or the maximum y value? Y. Because it's talking about height, this tells us, right, it says x represents seconds. So then that means my y value represents height. So I'm looking for the maximum y value, which means I'm going to go to second calc. I'm going to go to number 4, maximum. And then once I figure out what the maximum is, my answer is going to be the y value. So I go second calc. I'm going to go down to number 4, which is maximum. And then I've got to go, so I hit second calc. I go down to number 4, which is maximum. Then it says left bound, so I'm going to arrow so that I'm to the left, right? If this is my maximum, if this point here is my maximum, I need to be to the left of it first. So then I hit enter. Then it asks right bound, so I'm going to pass it so that I'm on the right side of it and hit enter. And then I'm going to guess by getting as close to the top of it as possible. So then when I do that, what is my maximum? I get the whole maximum is 637. But again, you're only looking for the y value here. So my answer would be 37, and then my units for height is meters. Right, it says it's height in meters, so my height should be in meters. All right, so then part B says, how long will it take for the rocket to hit the ground? Hit the ground is a common phrase for which type of value that we're looking for? X-intercept, right? If you think about your graph, it's flying in the air, flying, and it hits the ground over here, which is an x-intercept. So to solve for x-intercept, I hit second calc, and then I use the second button, which is 0, to find my x-intercept. So I hit the blue button, which is my second, and then I hit the trace button, which makes calc. And then I'm going to go down to number 20. And now I'm looking for this x-intercept here. I don't care about this one because this one is negative, and time can't be negative. So I'm only solving for this x-intercept over here. So I need to be to the left of it first, and I hit enter. Then to be to the right of it, I need to pass it. And then to guess, I'm going to get as close to that x-intercept as possible. So when I do that, what is my x-intercept? 12.083 would be my decimal answer. And then my units for x values is seconds. So my x-intercept was at 12.083 seconds. Everyone was able to find the x-intercept on their calculator? All right. So then part C asks, what's the height of the rocket after 3 seconds? So 3 seconds is which type of value? Is that an x value or a y value? X, because it's talking about seconds, right? X represents the time in seconds. So this means x equals 3, and I'm trying to figure out what y is. So then I go to use value. So I'm going to go to second calc, and then I pick one value, but now I'm going to make x equal what? 3. Perfect. So I hit second calc. I'm using number 1 value, and I make x equal 3. And then when I hit enter, that says y is 28. So at 3 seconds, my rocket is 28 meters in the air. Everyone was able to find 28? All right. So then the last one says, what time will the rocket be 15 meters, or what times will the rocket be 15 meters in the air? So 15 meters is which value? Y. So this is saying that y is 15, and I need to find the x values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the button y equals, and then I'm going to make y2 equal 15. So I'm going to keep my first function here, but I'm going to make y2 15. Then I'll hit graph, and now I can see a line that is going through my graph. This is the y value 15. So then I'm going to figure out where my original graph and this red line cross. So we're going to hit second calc, and now we're going to use button number 5, which is intersect. So I hit second calc, and then I'm going to go to the button intersect. So it's going to ask first curve. That means, is it on the original graph that you drew? So that original line, which it is, so I hit enter. So now it asks, is the dot on the second line that you drew, which is that straight one? So then you hit enter. Then it asks you to guess. In this case, you need to find both of them. Just pick one to start with. So I'm going to find this one first. So I move it over as close as I can to where those two graphs intersect, and I hit enter. So when y was 15, x is 1.31. So that's one of my intersections. So now I have to repeat the exact same process to find this intersection over here. So I hit second calc, go back to intersect. I want to be on the blue, my U first. Then I want to be on the line. And then to guess, I'm going to get as close to their intersection as possible. So now I'm going to be over here. And I get the intersection 10.690. All right, so the other thing that we should have watched our videos to solve was solving systems of linear equations. So this is actually finding where two graphs intersect. So it would be like the exact same thing we did on our calculator, where we could graph them both and figure out where they intersect. That's one way. But there is a way that we can do it by hand, which is what we should have practiced over the week. So to solve this, we're going to set both equations equal to each other. So we just ignore the y's, and we're going to set negative 4x plus 3 equal to 2x squared plus 7x minus 3. So I set both of my equations equal to each other. So then next, to be able to solve, I need to make one side of my equation 0. So I'm going to move these two pieces over to the other side so that one side of my equation equals 0. So I'm going to add 4x and add 4x and subtract 3 and subtract 3. So then everything on this side of the equation cancels, and I get 2x squared plus 11x minus 6 when I bring them all over to the other side. So now, to solve for x, I'm going to factor. So since there's a leading coefficient in front of this, I need to figure out the numbers that multiply to give me 2 and multiply to give me 6. So that would give me 1 times 2. And then this is 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. So I know my first two terms have to be a 1x and a 2x. Right? The only option to get a 2 in the front is if this is one of them is a 1 and one of them is a 2. Now, what some of you are forgetting is that this last number has to come from this list. Last week I saw a lot of factoring where you just kind of picked two random numbers that I don't know where you got them. The last two numbers come from this list that when I do this smiley face, ugly eyebrow thing, I get 11. So if I think of my list 1 and 6 and 2 and 3, to get 11, I'm going to put a 6 here, because that's going to give me 12x. And a 1 here, because that's going to give me 1x. And if I make my 1 negative and my 6 positive, 12x minus 1x would give me 11x. So that means my factors are x plus 6 times 2x minus 1 which if I set those equal to 0, tells me that my x values are -6 and +1/2 when I solve them. So I'm not done though when I find the x values. Those are just the x values, yes. You're about to tell me the y values?
Oh.
Yeah, so I have to still find, I know what the x values are here, but I still have to find the y values that correspond with those x values. So I plug them into the smaller equation. So I'm going to find y when I make x -6, and I'm going to find y when I make x 1/2. So -4 times -6 is +24, plus 3 would mean y is 27. So when x was -6, y was 27. And then half of -4 is -2, plus 3 would give me +1. So when x was 1/2, y was +1. So when if I was to graph these, right, I would have a U shape and then a line. They intersected at -6, 27, and 1/2, 1. And you could find those on your calculator. If you made y1 this equation and y2 this equation, you could find those intersections just like we did in this problem. And they would be the same. Questions on this? Hopefully that felt like review. Okay. All right, so now back to math. On your desk when you got here was your quiz from last week. And if you weren't here, I gave you a blank quiz because you're not going to make it up. Whatever you get on the test, I replace any missing quizzes that you missed in class with your test. But what I did, and I guess this is a bad example because there's so many numbers. But what I did is I went through your quiz and I figured out what questions you needed the most help on. So at the top of your page, I put which stations that you need to work on. So starting at the beginning of the list and working your way this way. Each station has a QR code that if you scan, a video going over the examples will show up on your phone. Going over the examples, and then there's 6 questions for you to try. And that happens for every station. So we only have about 25 minutes left in class for you to work on this. I would start at the top of your list. This is what you are the worst at, in my opinion. And you can start working your way through this. I will have the answers laid out on that back table and that front table for you to check as you go. But this is kind of your preparation for your test that's next week. Cool? So if you have headphones, you can put your headphones in and watch the videos. If you don't have headphones, you could probably turn it on low and not many people would hear it. But you have the rest of class to work on this, and I can answer any questions that you have.
So there was a test last week.
There was a quiz last week. This is the quiz they took last week. Yeah.
But
So you don't have to make it up. It's just so you know what the quiz was on, because this is basically what the test. It's similar to what the test is like.
And the test is next week.
Yes.
Okay.
So if I were you, you could probably look through and see if there's a particular station you think you need more help on.
Okay.
So you can work on that while I'm here and can answer questions. If not, you could just start at the top and work your way through.
Cool. Sounds good.